If you would have asked me 6 months ago whether this was a good idea, I probably would have said no. Today is January 20th, 2026. On March 8th, I'm competing in Madrid. Somewhere between those two sentences is the story. In July 2025, my life got flipped around. Not in a big cinematic way, but more as a slow realization that a lot of things I thought were solid weren't as fixed as I'd assumed. Work started to feel different. Planning too far ahead felt optimistic, and even thinking in weeks instead of days suddenly felt ambitious. Around that time, I was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer. That tends to reorganize your priorities a bit. Life didn't collapse or anything like that, but it definitely slowed down. Things that used to run quietly on autopilot suddenly needed attention, including my body, which up until then had been pretty cooperative. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was a part of that shift too. Training had been baked into my weeks for years. I didn't plan around it, it was just there. And then it wasn't. Between the diagnosis, the surgeries, and recovery, I spent about 4 months not really training at all. No drilling, no rolling, no pretending I was still kind of training on the side. And that's a long time when moving your body is kind of your thing. And when that momentum disappears, your head tends to fill the silence. And then came the surgeries. 2 of them, back to back. One in September and one in November. Both were necessary and both had more impact than you really understand until you're already on the other side of them. After that, your body, it feels familiar but not entirely trustworthy. Energy shows up when it feels like it. Strength is inconsistent. And recovery suddenly has options. You don't lose everything, but you also don't get a clear manual on how to continue. As of right now, I'm recovering. Actively, very imperfectly, and very much in real time. Slowly, things are starting to come back online. Movement came first, then a bit of structure, and eventually training again. Stepping back on the mats didn't feel like a big return or a victory lap. It felt more like reconnecting with something I already knew, but from a slightly different angle, in a body that I didn't fully trust yet. It was at the same gym and the same team, but I was showing up differently. And honestly, that part mattered more than I expected. And from the start, there was support. Not in a loud or pushy way, but simply in being allowed to be where I was. Teammates, coaches, the gym itself. No pressure to rush anything and no expectations to perform. Just space to figure things out. And training picked up again. But not in a highlight reel kind of way. Some days felt good and some days felt like my body and I were still negotiating terms, and most days landed somewhere in the middle. Underneath all of that, there's doubt. I started questioning my conditioning, my timing, and on some days, my own body. Sometimes it felt like my head was a step ahead of what my body was willing to do, and sometimes it was the other way around. And my thoughts, they can be pretty creative. They come up with scenarios, worst cases, and what ifs, and they're usually very, very convincing. I'm still learning how to listen to them without immediately believing everything they say. High-level training, at least for me right now, is not about feeling ready all the time. It's about showing up and seeing what's actually there. Then, almost casually, while gaming with a teammate, the topic of competition came up. Other teammates are competing at the IBJJF Europeans right now, people that I train with and respect. And hearing that did something. And later when I talked about it with my friend again, I noticed something I didn't really expect. I got nervous. Not excited nervous, not hyped nervous either. It was that slightly uncomfortable, why does this matter to me kind of nervous. And that's usually a good sign. Because the things that make me nervous in that specific way are usually the things I shouldn't talk myself out of. And competing at that level was something I'd been moving towards before everything changed. Not as a lifetime dream, just the next step that made sense at the time. So when the diagnosis happened, that plan didn't disappear dramatically, it just stepped aside for a while. Apparently it was still waiting. So for people who don't live in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a bit of context helps. The IBJJF is where the sport really tests itself. It's structured, international, and very honest. You don't show up to see how it goes, you prepare or the reality check is immediate. Madrid is one of those events. So that's where I'm going. On March 8th, I'll be competing at the IBJJF Madrid, about 6 months after my first surgery. This series is about everything that happens in between. The training, the adjustments, the doubts, the small wins, the days where things click, and the days where they really don't. It's an open look at what it's like to step back into something challenging while you're still figuring it out for yourself. And training just happens to be the lens. Today is January 20th, 2026. March 8th is the date. Madrid is the location. And there are 47 days until fight day. Everything between now and then is the story. My name is An. I'm 41 years old. And I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt. This is Fightready. Let's get to work.